I'm conscious that you deliberately said you didn't use the universal in universal basic income, but obviously lots of other people are using that. I suppose the question is, how do you, in broad brush terms, I know you said there's a debate about some of this, but how do you determine who realistically is eligible? You talked about a community. How do you determine who is eligible? Sort of who's in and who's out, if you like, without either, you talked earlier about the obvious criticism that the whole world would want to come here and claim their free income. That's one obvious downside on the one hand, and obviously on the other hand, the obvious problem would be to create effectively a two-tier labour market where lots of people who are legally working in the UK but aren't British citizens wouldn't be eligible for it, and therefore they would gain none of the benefits that people have advocated this morning.
If I was a philosopher king, as it were, I would want everybody to have a basic income as a right, an economic right. But pragmatically and politically, one would obviously have to have a restriction.
It seems to me that when I think about the politics of the kind of progressive people who quite like this idea, they probably don't like the idea that we say, here are these people who are in the UK who are part of, in inverted commas, our community, but they're not part of this, they're not part of us, they're not eligible. But on the other hand, if you don't say that, then everyone's in and the whole thing becomes a kind of global thing.
The definition we've used is that anybody is a usual resident of the place. I'm a British citizen, I work in Europe, and therefore I would not be eligible to be receiving the basic income.
It seems to me that creates an obvious kind of underground market in fake accommodation in London, where people who live not in London claim to live in London because there's suddenly a huge amount of money at stake.